Welcome back, you nerds. Oh, my neck. Hold on. Oh.
You okay?
I went to go use my stomach. All right. Welcome back, guys. Sorry. This this episode is pretty much going to be ruled by Star Wars. Star Wars news. We got a bunch of stuff to go through, so we're just going to get it started right now.
And the Mandalorian.
Yes.
Star Wars.
But before, like, we were talking about a bunch of like little news things before all that stuff. So like, I don't know, Josh, if you saw it. So like, to anybody listening out there, our neighbor in the duplex we live in is a writer for the Daily Mail. So we get like a little scoop, at least whenever I go out to my car. And she, so the latest thing is that Amazon is looking to potentially buy AMC.
Huh. That's big.
Because who was it last time? It was Disney, we heard. There was somebody, we just talked about it a couple weeks ago about somebody else possibly buying AMC.
Oh, Netflix.
I mean, to be honest, that would be a good move because I wouldn't want Disney to buy it because, yeah.
Disney owns everything.
What's weird is, I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I think like Disney's actually not in the position to buy, but to be bought. And so it's I don't know enough about business and like stocks and IPOs and all this stuff, but like it has something to do with like the potential for like what businesses could continue making money, depending like on like if the current world circumstances go certain directions and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So like like Disney, I guess the Shanghai Disney World or Disneyland or whatever it was just reopened. And we're going to see, it's going to take like 2 or 4 weeks to see like if that's a disaster or not, if they're able to manage it. But like if Disney's not able to make money and, like an Apple can, because they have other things that are, like people are using when they're home.
Yeah.
And stuff. It might just, it's like, what did one of the film critics called it a fire sale, like, so some of these companies are like, okay, so a bunch of these other companies are being devalued at the moment, and this is when we could scoop them up. And then the other companies have no choice, unless they just want to go under. I think was it Amazon? Let me make sure I double check the thing. I think it was Amazon, just because like they're
that makes the most sense, to be honest.
They could buy everything right now.
Yeah, they got money to actually put up. So because I don't know, we'd also talked about like the possibility of like the theater kind of industry shrinking a lot, they'd at least have the money to keep it up.
It is Amazon. Yeah, I think I forget if it was Amazon or another Chinese company or AMC's parent company, which is a Chinese company, saying something like they would have to like try to bail out, or if Amazon was going to try to help bail out AMC, it would make more sense to just buy it outright instead of trying to do this weird lending thing and stuff,
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's interesting. And that, like, with the whole thing, like Universal, they're tied to like Comcast and stuff, so they're not worried about like theatrical releases. But then, you mentioned Disney, and this is like, we're just like kind of flashing through all the news stuff. I don't know if you saw, but like Hamilton got pushed up by over a year. And Hamilton was supposed to come out next summer, not like summer of 2021 or maybe later. But it's a professional filming of the Broadway show.
Oh.
So I guess like a really good director went and shot 3 Hamilton shows on Broadway, and they were going to release it in theaters because they kind of wanted to capture, like the energy of the original show or whatever.
Oh, weird.
And so it was supposed to come out in theaters, and Disney just announced this morning that they're just going to drop it on Disney Plus on July 3rd. It's 15 months early.
Why not?
Yeah,
but
I guess so.
It's wild. But I think they said that they invested $75 million or something crazy.
What?
Shit.
Like, I don't know. Like, it's some crazy number. I think. Look at that again. I gotta go look at it again.
That's a lot of money for just shooting some live shows.
Well, I guess it depends on how extensively detailed.
Yeah, I don't know what goes into it because you got Lin-Manuel Miranda, and then like half the cast are other stars out, in their own right now as well.
Yeah,
because I think some of the Broadway cast ended up going to like TV and film.
I was gonna say if they weren't famous beforehand, they're definitely gonna be famous now.
Yeah, I think a lot of them are, because I've never seen. Hamilton.
Like movie famous though, not just
gotcha.
Theater famous.
Yeah, so it was a bold move that was just kind of out of left field. Like it was the thing. Like Hamilton was one of the most like like things that people were like waiting on
Yeah.
to come out in theaters, and for them to just be like, hey, it's gonna be on Disney Plus. They just like bypassed everything, not $20 rental, nothing. They're just like, here it is. And
Cool.
I don't know what the thinking is behind it, other than maybe just goodwill, you know, maybe some signups. I mean, there's the argument of like, well, maybe it's for new signups, but you can get a 30-day trial for free, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's bold move. Maybe they're just like playing chicken with the other services and stuff. You know, like we got like something that not only was supposed to come out this season, it was supposed to come out next season.
Jeez.
Which is wild because it reversed the Lin-Manuel Miranda release schedule, because this summer was supposed to be In the Heights, the movie.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the Broadway show. It's an actual filmed movie. But that got pushed to next summer. And now so it happened in reverse. So interesting. I would love to be a fly on the wall of like those decisions.
Sounds like the Wild Wild West now, because I mean there are no like written rules of how to conduct yourself in a pandemic like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just everywhere. And then I think the last little thing I saw was Quibi is like tanking like phenomenally, and Jeffrey Katzenberg.
The idea just sounded stupid.
Did you see the quote though from him? I'm not going to butcher it, but if you look it up, it pretty much says this. He says he blames every bit of Quibi's failure on the pandemic.
Oh, bullcrap.
Most people are like,
it's the opposite.
So what's the wrong? Yeah, it's like what? Like, and I think like a lot of YouTubers already see the inherent problems with it. Is that there's the only marketing they did was for the namesake.
Yeah,
like we didn't
see what it does.
Besides like Reno 911, there wasn't anything like recognizable, you know.
Yeah,
they were advertising, and then you heard by word of mouth like, oh, Chrissy Teigen has a show, but we didn't see a commercial for it.
Yeah, I just saw a crap
Idris
ton of
Elba.
Quibi commercials.
Yeah,
Idris Elba was another show,
and
supposedly on there.
And so like all the YouTubers are just kind of like, they didn't reach out to a single like creator in the digital space.
No,
like
it was all celebs.
Like Phil DeFranco was joking, but I think it would have killed. Like he was like, well, they should give me $20 million to move this show to Quibi exclusive. And it's like, you know what? Wouldn't have been the worst idea.
Yeah.
To get a news show in 10-minute bites from like arguably one of the biggest news shows on YouTube,
Yeah, I mean, dude, hire a crap ton of people from YouTube that are already big, move them over there.
Yeah, because they're already used to making like shorter form content.
Exactly.
I don't know, at least some. Just so that like, because they were saying, because like what a lot of creators do now is like they have like, especially educational YouTubers have their YouTube channel, they put the free content up, but then they also like do Skillshare like lessons. It's not behind a paywall, but then they're able to like advertise. They're like, oh, and if you'd like to learn more about this camera, I have a whole course on it on Skillshare, and stuff. So they could have gone that way, but it kind of goes to show. I guess I either forgot or didn't know that Jeffrey Katzenberg was like the brainchild of all this. And it kind of goes to show that like traditional Hollywood just doesn't get like new media at all. You know?
They still don't get that crap. Music industry doesn't get newer media. Hollywood doesn't get new media. It's just radio is dying. Like they're dumb. They're idiots.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's interesting because I think they said the telltale sign was that when Quibi debuted, it was like number 50 on the top free apps or something like that. That's another thing. It's a free app and you get 3 months for free.
Jeez.
And they couldn't get people to sign up for it. So it debuted at 50. Wow. And then like I think now they said it's not even the top 100 anymore. And they said after they got 3 million some downloads and like a little over 1 million active users. And they're like, if you just throw that number out of somebody, like, oh, that's a lot. And you're like, but not really. Like
No.
a million active users is like a lot of successful YouTube channels as far for one person.
Yeah.
Let alone a network that has like a bunch of celebrities that have their own shows.
Yeah.
So you know what? Maybe that's where I got the 75 million number. That's what it was. But the Hamilton thing still was like a lot of money that they were just like, because they were supposed to make theater numbers with it, and then they're just going to drop it for free on a $6 a month service.
Yeah, I don't know.
But the Quibi thing was like a whole train wreck. That's really interesting. I don't know if you're listening and you've been watching Quibi. I've heard mixed things. Like there's good shows on there and there's just like forgettable shows on there. So if you have any recommendations, you've been watching it, leave a recommendation, because now is the time. If you have any kind of content out there, like everything, even our like RKVC, our YouTube channel, all our numbers across the board just going up. You can just tell people have extra time to watch stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's not any one video. It's just like all the content has like a push on it. You know, not push, but like more eyes on it now. Because I'm just gonna guess more people are just browsing.
Right.
You know?
Everybody's got time.
Yep. Well, I think the rest of this episode is going to be like Star Wars related, but I do have like one more thing.
Okay.
Swamp Thing is coming to the CW.
Oh, interesting.
I'm not happy because I mean, like, it was a cool show and it was dark, but you know they're gonna move it to the CW. That means like any horror aspect of it is gonna be literally gone. It's gonna be washed, and it's just I don't know. It's gonna be very very teeny after this.
It's going to be kidified.
Exactly. And the whole reasoning is like, they kind of have like a dry spell in their programming. So because of all this coronavirus stuff. So
it's the Swamp Thing show that was on.
Yes.
And interesting. So
remember, like last time I think they canceled it because
like before the season was over.
Well, yeah, because I think it has something to do with the location. I don't know. I can't remember. And it was so long ago. It was a cool show though.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can't. I don't think I ended up watching that.
Same here. I was intending to watch at least the first episode and never really got to it. But Josh, you watched it.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, like, there's some cheesy aspects of it, but I mean, like, any kind of like fun monster horror is gonna have that. So
yeah. Real quick, I know they said that was the last one, but Josh brought up a good point before we start recording. So last week we left the cliffhanger of like big Mortal Kombat news for the teaser. If you haven't played the game yet and you want to play story mode, skip ahead a couple minutes because major spoilers for the game. But the end of Mortal Kombat 11 is basically endgame. Time restarts. Liu Kang and Raiden Liu Kang is a god. Raiden's no longer a god because it's a whole convoluted story, and they're at the end of time. And Liu Kang, this is the ending where Liu Kang and Raiden are recreating time. And that's how it ended previously. Yeah. Or you had another ending where he restarted time with Kitana, who's his bride in that ending. The one they chose to go with is the one with Raiden, which Mortal Kombat, they know their demographic, bros before hoes, So Liu Kang and Raiden restart time. And then in this DLC trailer, Shang Tsung interrupts the ending that we saw.
Yeah.
And they immediately announce Fujin, who hasn't been in a Mortal Kombat game for 14 years. Everybody lost their mind because he's Raiden's brother,
right?
So he really is like a whole like family affair. He's the Wind God, and then they announced Shiva, who was in the original story mode, is going to be like a playable character now. And then all the DLC they had released in this first year are the main characters of this new story mode. And it's called Aftermath. It's crazy. I'll try to put the link to the trailer and the thing so Josh can put it in the show notes. But like, if you're a Mortal Kombat fan, like this was such big news, and they know the fan base so well.
Yeah.
Some people are complaining, but those are the same people that would complain about literally everything else in the game.
Of course.
But the
RoboCop,
the big thing is like Shang Tsung is like no one can know what happens next, not even me. And then cop calls for backup, and then out of the cop car, RoboCop walks out, and you're like,
"It's freaking crazy!"
What?
The whole deal, man. You see it happen,
and it's what's his name? Peter Weller.
Yeah.
He's actually voicing RoboCop in this, and they went with their old design, not the 2014 design.
Yeah, it's the OG,
and it's crazy because like they haven't. I think the gameplay trailer. See, it's funny. It's funny how they time this. The gameplay trailer for that DLC releases at 6 a.m. Like what? Like 10 hours from now. Like,
nice.
So like by the time you hear this, there already been a week of that trailer being out, so you probably already see all this stuff. But people are already like coming up with like, oh man, they're gonna have the data spike go through people's heads, and like whatever his fatality is gonna be. Also, we have the Terminator versus RoboCop in a game. And
what the heck,
man.
And Spawn.
Well, we had Terminator versus RoboCop.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but no, but I mean, like in Mortal Kombat, now they can do like
that was cool though.
Now they can do fatalities on each other.
Yes.
And then the trailer ends with Scorpion getting a giant teddy bear. They brought friendships back. Like, God, they released another teaser today of Kung Lao making a toy train set around his hat
Oh, God.
and playing with toys, and Noob Saibot does like double Dutch.
That was hilarious with his own self.
Kano literally has shrimp on the Barbie. It's a whole thing. I'm so stoked. They're doing this right because the film critics have picked up that the reason this is happening is to all lead up to the movie coming out in January.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
They're like, this thing is dropping now, but it also probably means more stuff is going to keep dropping, like more surprises, all the way up through December, just to keep everybody's heads in the game.
Well, that's good.
When the movie comes out. And I don't know, super excited because now there's like rumors of like, what if you beat the new story mode and then it unlocks Sector and Cyrax? Because you fight them in the original story mode. They're fully functional, but you can't play as them.
Yeah.
So it's like that doesn't make any sense. They haven't announced any yet, but there's like they've only announced 3 of the characters, and there's slots for like 6 total. So like where, and no one's saying anything about it from NetherRealm.
I hope they do.
Yeah, so all the fans are like, "What if you beat the story mode and then just these characters are unlocked now? Yay!"
Like make it happen.
Yeah, that's I don't know, amazing, super happy.
Cool.
And then there's no smooth segue to Star Wars from there, but let's do it.
No, it's fine. Two short news stuff of Star Wars beforehand. I can never say this guy's name right, but the guy who played Jango Fett in the Clone Wars, he was all the clones. He is gonna portray Boba Fett in The Mandalorian season 2.
Gosh,
So-
that's awesome.
So I heard that he was in the previous season of Mandalorian. Was that what I read?
I don't know. Was it?
And because I don't know, I might be reading this wrong or I remembering it wrong, but I thought that they said that he was in the previous season and people thought that was Boba Fett. And then his casting in this season kind of was like, oh yeah, Boba Fett was kind of in the background of the first season. I'd have to rewatch it.
Oh, it's just like a maybe he was back there kind of thing.
I don't know.
Like,
yeah,
oh, he's in the background here.
that'd be
Yeah.
that'd be a sweet little like Easter egg though. Like after it's like a Pixar-esque, like teaser of the next thing.
Also,
I'm excited.
Katie.
to see-
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying, I'm super excited to see Boba Fett or Jango Fett, whoever ends up in this thing.
Yeah. I mean, it was because in the Clone Wars, he's Boba Fett's like the son of the guy that's creating all the clones, but he's creating clones of himself.
Right.
And so like he dies, Jango Fett dies, and his son, who is a clone of himself, which is weird.
Right.
Like his is my son. Like, no, that's
Boba.
you. Like, but it's Boba Fett, and he's a little kid in the movie. But anyway, Katie Sackhoff, who actually voices Bo-Katan in the Clone Wars cartoon, is going to be Bo-Katan in the Mandalorian season 2. So it's kind of crazy. Like,
That makes
we
sense.
got like a crossover from a voice actor doing it. Like, that's pretty rad. Which is kind of sad though, because like the girl Ashley Eckstein, who's the voice actress for Ahsoka Tano, she's cosplayed as Ahsoka Tano before, and she looks like dead on. Like she looks really close to it. So it's like, oh man, that kind of sucks that like, Katie got to be her person in the Mandalorian, but Ashley doesn't get to be hers. I mean, like I like Rosario Dawson, but
It's funny. Like that's kind of Rosario's like thing now. Those replacing original cast members.
oh yeah,
Because when Rent came to movies,
Oh yeah.
they had the entire original cast except for Rosario Dawson's character. She replaced the original cast member, and they just didn't cast her because they said she looked too old.
oh ouch.
Can you imagine having the entire original cast except for you?
Yeah. Wow, that is a smack. Jeez.
So it's just like, I guess that's when you want to replace somebody. You're like, it's Rosario Dawson.
yeah. That's funny though.
Weird. But anyway,
I don't mind that at all, actually.
Yeah. That's just weird to replace someone like that. Yeah.
That's weird.
But
I'm down with that though too.
this
Just
week,
in case you thought I wasn't.
sorry, we're getting all delayed. This week, what was the name of this thing that we watched? It was like basically the Mandalorian behind the scenes, right?
It was like Disney Galleries.
It's
The Mandalorian. So it kind
Set
of
a table.
it kind of implied that there's going to be more galleries of other original series they do, Because this is the way it titled. This is Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian. It was like, well, I guess there could be Disney Gallery, WandaVision, Disney Gallery,
Right.
Hawkeye or something.
Yeah.
It's just the way it's branded. I don't know that for a fact. It's just interesting that they chose that preface,
So explain it, right? So it's a sit down with all these directors that worked together on the Mandalorian episodes. Some of them had their own, and then I guess all of them worked together on some as well.
it was much different than I thought it would be. Not bad. I was expecting behind the scenes. There was some behind the scenes stuff, but it was essentially like a long podcast, like edited together.
Yeah.
And the directors, they're very talented people. All right, they made some awesome episodes, and I love their work. And they're just boring. I fell asleep in that first episode.
Oh wow!
Like it I don't know, they were just like, and I thought I would like them because Taika Waititi and Jon Favreau and Bryce Dallas Howard. I mean, and I'm glad that they're proud of themselves, but they were literally just complimenting themselves for half that first episode. The second one was more interesting because they pulled in like the VFX people and stuff.
Yeah.
And then they started asking the directors. See, that's where the editing came in because I was like, wait, wasn't the VFX guy sitting there? And they just cut over as Taika Waititi. But they were asking them about like the legacy of Star Wars and the history and the arc of a hero and stuff. And that got a little bit more exciting or a little bit more interesting. But like, it was still like, I don't know. It was like kind of like just a okay podcast to me for a while until they cut to footage, you know, of them like some blooper reel or something.
It was funny because like what you just said is like the second episodes they're supposed to be, you know, they had Kathleen Kennedy there, which annoys me to death, and she was boring as all get out. But then you're asking like some of the, you know, the VFX people from the prequels and other stuff going on. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And halfway through that, they just cut back to the people that were in the first episode, to like all the directors again.
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute, did you guys just get bored with the people before or not get enough? You know, and then you could obviously tell in the second episode, like, we're looking for stuff to fill this episode with.
Yeah, it was weird because I was looking forward to hearing more, especially from the VFX guy, because he was telling the story about like how he started working at Skywalker, Lucasfilm, and like how, you know, he knew that they weren't going to make, you know, he like Star Wars was already made, so he obviously wasn't going to work on that, but he was going to hope to work on the next like thing that would be equal to Star Wars.
Yeah,
and then he found out it was Star Wars and stuff like those are cool stories to hear.
Was Kathleen Kennedy the one that worked with Spielberg? Spielberg and Lucas on Indiana Jones? Is that who she was? Yeah.
And it's just funny, like halfway through they just cut it in and
yeah, this is like, okay.
However, like through both of those episodes, whenever like Dave Filoni talks, like you just see him, like even in like you could see the B-roll of him like when they just shoot like some of the behind the scenes stuff and you just see him directing or doing what he's doing, he has like a smile on his face like the entire freaking time. Like, and whenever he talks, he's like he's coming from all like this area of like actually understanding the franchise. It's hilarious. Like at the beginning, he's talking to Favreau and he's like, "Oh, remember the scene in Empire, or whatever?" And Favreau goes like, "That's a deep cut for me, man. I don't know."
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. It's just funny, like to see him talking, and he was just so like you could tell he loves like the lore and he's into it and understands every bit of it. And you know, everybody else actually in the second episode, it's like he's sitting there going around, they're talking about something, and everyone's just looking at him like you could tell they're intensely like, yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, when he was talking about the parallels of the heroes' journeys and stuff.
Yeah, he explains everything.
That was the moment he became interesting to me. and then they stopped. Then it was like episode over. I'm like,
that was the end.
Like this should have been like the beginning for me, you know, as far as like an interesting series. I guess it would have been different if I would have like come into it being like, oh, this is a podcast with like all the directors.
Yeah.
I would have had a different expectation. I'll sit there like, I'm gonna fall asleep. I fall asleep. Like,
yeah.
But then he was so passionate at the end, like you said, like it. He wasn't doing the comic book guy that's like, well, actually, and the third thing, he was kind of like doing the overarching like principles of stuff, and just the way he put it was so like beautifully poetic, and I was like, oh, I'm really I don't know what he knows. I don't. There's a ghost that just knocked something off a shelf. I don't know what he knows, but I can read the passion in his voice and his eyes, you know? And then that made me interested. And maybe that's what it was. The rest of the time, everybody was just kind of like, especially Bryce Dallas Howard. I think she's amazing, but like, she just, I don't know. I can't say that I remember anything that she contributed that was new to the conversation, but that goes for everybody.
Yeah.
I think the closest was Taika in the first, I can't remember if it was the first or second episode, but Taika at some point said something about like, it's not funny, it's just aware or something like that. And or no, it's it doesn't take itself too seriously, but it doesn't make a joke of itself. It just believes in itself and remains humorous. And I was that's a really good way of putting that, you know?
I think he said humor is in the action is funny, but not making fun of it. So like have humor in what you're doing in the action. Just don't point to it like, hey, look, this is dumb.
But right after that, he said something that I thought was really interesting. He said, like, it's never too serious, but it always believes in itself. And I was like, that's a really good way of putting it. It's like, you can tell the humor comes in for most of it is that we're on the outside watching in, you know? Mm-hmm. But for the actual characters, it's not that funny. They're just trying to survive. And these moments that come up humorously because we know they're going to survive, or we know that, you know, we know something they don't. So we're just like kind of watching this play out and stuff. But the people, like the story and the people in the story, they all believe in it. You know, they're not like, it's not like a Deadpool, you know, can you believe this? Like,
Yeah.
For me, it was one of the first times I've ever seen a show like this that has so many directors on the same thing. Like, has anyone, both of y'all, have you ever heard of a show where there's 6 or 7 directors on the set at the same time doing shit?
Yeah, I did see that. It was kind of weird that they were on a lot of the same sets at the same time.
Yeah.
But each episode had their own director. So
yeah, that's very common in TV.
Yeah, because that was a first for me. I'm like, holy crap. And then them talking about how they all work together and how they all know their strong suits and they know how like one tackles this thing, the other tackles this part. Like, and John kind of just is like nods his head because he's probably like the mastermind who put it all together.
I guess think that normally they have all the directors like together though. Like when we talk about something like The Flash, like you've had a multitude of different directors for The Flash, and including whether it be Kevin Smith or even the girl that does Supergirl. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but she's also directed an episode. So it's like they're not all there, but is kind of probably putting this thing together. I'm sure Disney, and they even talk about it in some of this episode, and some of the first episodes, like they want to make sure that this is like the best that they can put out. You know.
I'm curious though if how often they were all together, because I don't know, because just Disney is like notorious for shooting behind the scenes for the sake of shooting behind the scenes. So we don't even actually know if some of the stuff we saw that was BTS was actual BTS, or if they were filming it for this series.
That's true.
Or if it was more like, see, like they didn't go in. This would have been what would been interesting to me is that they would have gone into like how they shot stuff, because I'm probably wrong about this, but the implication I got from seeing them on each other's sets was that maybe they had like a set that needed to be used for several episodes, and so each director had their slot, you know, like with the cast and the set or something like that, while they had it set up.
Yeah.
Or something. But that even doesn't make complete sense. Well, I don't know, because it doesn't make complete sense because the surroundings were that big LED wall, which is really cool. But they didn't even go to that. I'm guessing that's going to be another episode or something. They'll go into like the LED wall background and stuff.
I'm glad that they started with that right off the bat, because I wouldn't have watched the rest of it.
But the we'll see that later. But the set in the middle, maybe it was just easier or something. I don't know. You know, like, or they had a certain set of people that they could. I don't know. And then like whoever like needed to shoot scenes, you just show up that day and do that. I don't know if that's how it worked, or if they just were with each other just so they could know each other's story beats to continue. You know, where the last one left off or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, you saw George in there too a few times, so it's like, oh, I know he's not there the entire time, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't tell. Was he in there in the Mandalorian sets, or was it just the...
Yeah, there's some of the
Mando sets.
Huh. Because it was interesting because, what's his name?
Dave
Filoni?
Yeah.
Specifically said that Lucas doesn't work with them on it anymore.
Well, I'm sure they called him in just to kind of, probably for one, to get some shots of what they're doing now, and for two, to like, get some behind the scenes, like, what do you think about this?
I mean, it might just have been a period where he was working with them, because it was just the three of them, John, Joe, and John, Dave, and George.
Okay.
I can't get all my names.
I just couldn't. I guess I would say I would go back and watch it, but I'm genuinely not interested.
Yeah.
But go watch and see like if they were actually those or if it was other, because Filoni had worked on other Star Wars things. So I was losing track if they were actually on the Mandalorian set altogether. But
Well, Filoni did the Clone Wars stuff.
Yeah, the 3D Clone Wars.
Well, he did the cartoon because they had originally had like a regular cartoon, and then they had the Clone Wars television show. That's like a computer animated.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of based off the other one. So, yeah, it was kind of cool to hear his whole like, because he was doing like, he was working for Nickelodeon for Last Airbender, and apparently like people were bullying him because he's such a nerd in Star Wars. And so when they called him up, like, oh, you should come meet George Lucas. We think you're the guy to do this show. He's like, oh, who is this? You guys set this someone up from SpongeBob, like like someone's setting me up. Like, hey there, we'd like you to be in Star Wars.
That was a good laugh too. He's like, you don't know how much I am the guy. I'm the guy, or whatever he said there. It was a good laugh.
He said like the lady who'd done the meeting over the phone was like, oh, I should have not had this person, but they had already set up the meeting.
yeah. Figured they'd humor him.
Yeah.
I love it.
Man, people outside of LA just knew how many like whim decisions like create such huge ripples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just that way he was saying, like when he left that interview, he was like, well, I probably didn't get it. I'm never going to see these people again. And they not only did they not wait to like call him later, she just like walked out the door. She's like, you're hired. Bye. And then
Shut the door.
okay. You know, like what am I supposed to do with that? You just told me I'm part of Star Wars.
Another thing that made this thing kind of fun to watch was really just like the overall understanding of these guys get it. Like they talked enough. You hear them talk through this thing. And the important things that they're talking about are all like the key things that make Star Wars great, like the heart of it, heart of the storyline, and all the bells and whistles, obviously, but more importantly, the heart of the story.
What I thought was interesting because I was especially Josh, because I know you're really, really into Star Wars. I felt like all the things that the directors were pointing out, especially Filoni, about the prequels, that they were talking about them like they were all strengths.
Yeah.
But all the things he mentioned are things I hear Star Wars friends that are Star Wars fans, like say they were the opposite. They were the worst.
Like what?
So like they were talking about Anakin being just as useless as like Jar Jar Binks and stuff, but he didn't speak badly of Jar Jar. You know, he the context that he put him in the sentences and the description he had, like made Jar Jar just as essential as the other characters to be like this, all this stuff. Like it wasn't, there was no like, oh yeah, that was a mistake, or like maybe that wasn't our strongest day or something like that. They talked about the prequels like they had how I kind of feel about them, because that's when I've said this before, I was brought into the Star Wars universe through the prequels, and though I don't think they're perfect and Anakin could have been a little less cringy, like I thought they were big, like grandiose movies, and I dug it enough that I kept going, and then got into the rest of the universe outside of whatever he knew, but like the things he was saying about like the story arcs and like how people arrived at certain places, like I got it because that's kind of how I felt when I first saw them. But I feel like all my Star Wars like friends like were just like, no, that shouldn't have been this, it should have been that, it should have been that, and I can't disagree with them because I don't know more, But it was just interesting that he didn't acknowledge any shortcomings.
Well,
of the
I think we
prequels,
talked about this. I don't know if it was last episode or the time before. We got a little bit into Star Wars, and it was like the prequels are put together pretty well from like an overall arc point of view. And the newer ones, I don't think at all, because obviously they almost didn't. I don't think they knew where they were going when they started it, and when they didn't really pass it on to anybody else, and they didn't finish it very well. But like in the prequels, because we had just watched it, I think I was talking about my kids and I had just watched the prequels so we could finish the Clone Wars, and because they attached so well, and basically the arc is great. It's, for one, it's the hokiness kind of the computer animation for me, and then on top of it, the dialogue is just really bad, and so yeah, there's just not enough points to connect. Like with the Clone Wars show, you can see Anakin slowly going bad, yeah, and so, or slowly getting to a point to where like he could make that bad decision,
Yeah.
Anyway,
You see it much more apparent in the Clone Wars cartoon or the 3D cartoon than you do in the sequel or the actual live action. The one thing for sure for Dave is I know that he doesn't see any of that stuff as shortcomings. But that's like his
Yeah.
children.
Well, you obviously
Even
can't
Jar
talk
Jar.
about it when you're on a.
Well, I know that, but he's not gonna like just because the people didn't like it. He's not gonna say it was like a bad thing to do.
I get that,
or a
but
mistake.
It wasn't that he did. It wasn't that he should have spoken them as shortcomings. It was the fact that he brought them up out like without being provoked as strengths.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Which shows you where his head is.
You know, it's kind of like if I walk into a room and it's like, guys, you know, you should check me do pull-ups. You know, and stuff. I'm like, but if you see me do pull-ups, you know, I can barely hang on to the bar. You know, it's just like a really weird thing to bring up when no one asked. You know, because like we're talking about this show, and then he would specifically, and it would connect. You know, he would talk about something in The Mandalorian that connected to his experiences on the prequels. But it was like I feel like in most cases, most people just like skirt it, you know, or just like just don't bring it up. And he brought it up, and it almost kind of implied to me that he was like super proud of it.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, he's definitely into it, which is my whole thing. Is like he's someone that understands it from beginning to end.
And
you know?
from that instance, he was just saying those two were throwaway things. That's why he brought up Jar Jar and Anakin, because in that scene that they had showed parallel to what he was talking about is that when they picked up Jar Jar and the kid, that they were just, why are we keeping them? They're throwaway things.
Well, that's actually dialogue in the movie at the
That's
beginning.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, the beginning of it, you see Obi-Wan go, "Oh, look, something else we have to drag along with us," kind of deal.
Right.
Some other useless thing or whatever.
Yeah, connecting that to. Yeah.
And like that's great, and I'm sure you could tell like Dave, like, because he talks about like sitting down with George Lucas and talking over things several different times, like, and just understanding where he's coming from. George wrote and directed those Phantom Menace movies. He didn't do everything in the older version, the older movies. Like other people were split to do different things. So like, I don't know. I feel like when maybe you get some good people doing what they're doing, and kind of leave him alone. He's doing everything in these movies. So like you can tell that maybe it didn't come out exactly the way he wanted to do. Maybe if he let like someone like oversee certain parts of it, it'd done better. But like I said, it's just there's hokey parts of it because I'm sure he was pushing the digital stuff too much, and just writing maybe had some problems. But you could tell Dave really loved where he was going and the idea and the arc of where he was going with it. And that shows, and especially in the Clone Wars cartoon.
I guess like I was actually talking to another friend that is kind of like me. It's like kind of like a casual fan, Like we go to Star Wars movies because it's like going to the Super Bowl. We're gonna go, and we're part of like the public zeitgeist. They kind of brought up a good point. They're like, if we fast forward to like just written history about now and not necessarily people who lived through it, we're probably going to remember those Star Wars films as great successes because on paper they made shit ton of money, and like it's just and in the end, like that's what speaks. So that's probably why like they kept going, despite all the controversy around them and bullying cast members and stuff like that. Like it's just like it's not like the X-Men series that kind of started a little disappointing for fans, but then just like objectively kept getting worse, except for maybe like the whole First Class reboot thing, and then just got to the point where Dark Phoenix is like the biggest failure, like in several facets. And things like Star Wars like kept making a lot of money. Even the flops made a lot of money, like more than a lot of like normal, like bigger, other blockbuster movies and stuff.
Well, people want to see it and even like this last one, I was like, I just want to see it end. Like, I just want to watch it and be done with it. I don't want someone to spoil it for me. So I actually paid to go see it. After the third X-Men movie, I was like, nope, no more of this crap. So I didn't watch any of those. I didn't think in theaters, except for the last one with you guys.
Yeah.
And Dark Phoenix. And I got that for free. So
Apocalypse was even worse.
Oh, it was.
Dude.
I had actually saw that one. I can't remember if I had to pay for that or not. I felt so bad about it because of Bryan Singer's whole deal. But
I remember having like faith of like, okay, you know what? Maybe this is the one. No.
I think The Last Stand actually made the most money, though. I'm pretty positive of all the X-Men movies, Last Stand made the most money. And it's universally hated.
Yeah.
So
I will say something about Last Stand. I can't actually remember a whole lot about the plot, But I remember it being kind of like, for me, like the Fast and Furious movies, like where when it's on, there's a lot of shiny stuff happening on screen. and so like it can be on and I can like not pay attention.
It cannot be on and I not pay attention to that awful movie. It's you need to watch it again if that's true.
Well, just because like I think about like the scene where they're fighting with the bridge and everything, and stuff like it probably doesn't make sense, but visually like it looks, like an action movie. Like there's stuff flying around, like laser beams flying everywhere and stuff. Like it kind of makes sense, but like I didn't like any of them. That was the thing. Like I think the only one I actually liked for the most part was Days of Future Past, because it was like a little bit more to me like X-Men, but also undid all the things I hated about the movie franchise. And that's why I thought I was like, okay, they have a handle on it. Now Apocalypse.
Nope.
And they immediately ruined it.
They put Bryan Singer back in charge of it.
God.
That was the worst upset. I'm not even as big a fan as Josh is, but like, because we hear you get upset about some like continuity stuff and some like liberties taken from away from source material, stuff like that. But this was the worst live action Apocalypse. I mean, it's the only one, but it was the worst I've ever seen as an attempt. Because Apocalypse, there's just so much great things to unpack in these live action, especially like where Marvel is today with their CG and stuff like that, or not even just Marvel, just Marvel, just all of the CG companies now, like to where they could really make a sick looking thing, and it's just fail.
Well, they wouldn't even follow their own continuity is the problem. The main problem is they didn't follow their own continuity. It was awful.
All they had to do was like certain fan favorite things, and they couldn't even do that.
You could write a book on things that just didn't have to be brought up to be in continuity. Like Moira McTaggart. I don't know what the fuck was going on there.
Yeah,
that was
like
stupid.
It was just like that could have literally just been Susan. Like
the Four Horsemen, stupid. Like that was supposed to be great.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess as far as continuity is the Moira thing, but also like the aging doesn't make sense.
Yeah, at all.
You're like, what did somebody point out? Like, what happened to like Xavier Magneto between 1990 and 2000?
Yeah,
because they stayed the same age from like the 60s through the 90s.
Yeah,
they're like literally the same actor, same age, and then from the like 90s to 2000s, like age 30 years.
So bad.
Yeah,
so bad.
So I don't know. I feel like because it wasn't as amazing as it could have been, like the Star Wars, the newer ones especially, aren't going to be remembered very well. I mean, because it just they didn't have a story arc over the top of it, and what they had at the end, they kind of just hobbled together.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I'm not necessarily saying it's going to be remembered as like a classic. I just think like when they look at the books, it'll just be like, oh, like this set of movies, these like 9 movies, they did very well, and unless there's someone who was there to experience it that's still around, I don't know if people like will necessarily like just know without seeing that like the middle 3 were like the best or something.
Are we talking like 50 years in the future, 100 years in the future?
Well, the thing I proposed earlier was like past, like to written history instead of like,
okay,
like experienced, so it's like kind of like us talking about, pioneers. We're guessing. There's not a living person that was part of that,
Yeah.
But like, it's interesting to think of like what can kind of be misinterpreted. Like there was a joke. I don't know if Josh, you ever heard this, but I remember being in college. Like, there was a whole thing about like anti-piracy, because when we went to college, it was like right in the heat of like Napster and everything. Because we just left high school and that started, and we got to college. It was just now you have a whole campus of people with like hard drives and everything.
Exactly.
It just got crazier. I think people are drag racing in our neighborhood now that there's nobody driving around. So we were saying like why it's important to buy the music you like is not only to support the artist, do all that right stuff, is because like if you want the history books to look right, then that's all they're gonna know, is like sales and chart numbers and stuff. So like at that time, if we fast forward in history, like they may forget about I don't know, like the Death Cab for Cuties and like really cool bands and stuff. and be like, oh, you know what was classic rock, like the pinnacle of like good rock music? Nickelback, because the sales numbers were insane, you know. And you look in, if no one was around, they couldn't tell you like, okay, it sold a lot, but we wouldn't really say it's like the pinnacle like example of like what we want it to be, you know, like or something.
Right.
Yeah. I would say, disco was kind of, especially when I was growing up in the 90s, like everybody hated disco. Like disco was like, especially punk rockers, even to that time, they're like, oh, that's awful. Even though it's like now, like that kind of funk and everything else is kind of making itself way back into music. Like, so we still kind of would think of that, even though I'm sure it made lots and lots of money, or they wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
So
It's funny. Yeah, it's very similar to Nickelback in the sense that nobody will. It's kind of like when Rod talks about
Chris Rock had this joke back in the 90s of like Spice Girls.
Yeah,
it's like,
Spice Girls.
They're magical. Sold 10 million albums. Ain't nobody you know bought one. Magic.
exactly. Yeah.
Nobody would admit that they like disco, but even me, like I like disco, but I don't like the original stuff. I just like what influences got brought over into newer types of genres, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, like, even Wikipedia talks about like how things were well received, and if we have better technology in the future, I'm sure we'll know like whether or not things were well received. So I don't know. I enjoyed this thing. I mean, I especially enjoyed when Filoni would talk. Like Favreau was okay. The rest of them, I don't know. Like I remember everybody who I'm sure has directed stuff, like Singer, I'm sure even was like, I've always been a fan of the X-Men, but like I think Bryce Dallas Howard was like, oh, I've always been a fan, and
yeah,
I just don't
convincing.
believe that. I mean, I was even looking up. It's like, well, yeah, you're a great actress, but what have you directed, and why are you here?
Hasn't she directed like other TV stuff though?
Only a couple of things. I mean,
Okay.
What Deborah Chow has directed a ton of great stuff. So like, dude, awesome. I'm glad she's on there.
Yeah, she did Mr. Robot and stuff.
Exactly.
Which
and so
is
like,
all-
and Taika being there that's perfect. Like, good job for getting Taika on there.
Yeah. That was amazing. It was the Deborah Chow you said?
Yeah.
Like her credit list is so impressive, and even thinking of the episodes that she's credited to directing and stuff, it's like fantastic work. Her talking, like I don't know how she gets things across on set. Like it was weird because like I'm generally pretty like open minded to like people and their demeanor and stuff. This group of people was just a snooze, and like when she would talk, it's like she would use as many adjectives in a sentence as possible. You know? Like she said poetic like delivery, I think like 6 times in a row or something, and I was like, I get it, you know, say it without saying it, you know, like it wasn't like I don't want to rag on it because it's not bad by any means, but I think you need to go into it knowing that it's like more of a podcast than like a BTS, and B was it? I already lost my train of thought. Podcast. And B, I was really surprised of how uninterested in a lot of the directors I was.
Yeah.
Because usually I love that behind the scenes and seeing people. There's something I can't put my finger on why I just lost interest in most of the lines of dialogue that they were exchanging.
It's almost like this was an afterthought. I mean, can everyone agree on that?
Oh, this thing?
yeah, like-
obviously, it's just kind of like pull everybody in afterwards.
Because there wasn't really like it didn't feel like somebody sat down and was like, this is what we want to do here. Let's film it. It was like, here's a bunch of crap we just have, turn it into something.
Yeah, that's how I feel about the second episode, especially. Like I said, halfway through, they're like,
yeah.
let's screw this earlier one, and we'll go
they're
back
like,
to
all
the
right, we
old
don't have
guys.
enough. Yeah, let's just pull from the first one.
This wasn't a criticism, but at one point I looked at Vince and I was like, not saying I hate it. I would just really love an interview with the camera guys and their decisions.
The cuts.
Like, well, just
And the angles.
what's just going on in their head, you know? Because like nothing was like horrible. I didn't say like, oh, why they shoot like that. But there was like a, what was going through your head when you decided to set the camera there?
There was
Just
so much
interesting.
movement for me. It was like a little too much movement, but I get it because if it wasn't there,
Yeah.
I would have got even further bored.
Well, yeah, it was weird because it was like at first it kind of like looked like it was handheld,
Yeah,
but the movement was really weird, so you could tell it was on a tripod.
yeah,
And so it was like it's on a tripod and someone's like manually
plug-in.
moving it.
Or it's a plug-in,
Yeah,
like
something.
a handheld plug-in.
and then it would be
shake.
like just like the one director's like ear from the back, and then like a third of the screen is covered by like the grate that's covering the camera and the windows, and stuff. And I'm like, I guess that's kind of artistic, but I just don't. I'm just wondering like if it's a producer's call or the camera guy's call. It's like, what thought process led you to all those shot decisions?
Yeah.
It was just interesting. I was like, this is a really, or maybe that was the point. It was that was the thing I was interested in. I was like, why that? That's okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
I mean,
Thought provoking.
obviously they're, just similar to the Swamp Thing where they're like, hey, let's hurry up. We need more stuff. I mean, I'm sure Disney needs some more stuff because of the whole coronavirus thing kind of knocking all these other things down temporarily. And I'm sure this is probably the easiest thing to do. Like, hey, let's just hurry up and get these guys in here. We'll shoot some whatever and, chop it up and send it out. I'm sure they probably already had this shot like a while ago.
I'm going to say it sounded like they had just worked on it. They
Really?
didn't say that.
Because they don't have anybody wearing masks.
No. I mean, just worked on the show.
Oh, okay.
Like it feels like it was the week after they wrapped.
Oh,
and
got
then
it.
they
Yeah.
Sat down. Like they didn't say that. It just like it felt that way by the way that they were talking to me, at least. So it'd be interesting to find out when they actually filmed that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Wonder if they were gonna like shove it on like the DVD or be like, yeah, we'll just put this somewhere some point in time.
That
But like
makes-
this time they're like, hey, we're just gonna release it now because we still need some stuff to kind of trickle along before we get out to the Mandalorian, which is the only thing right now apparently that's not being pushed back.
Oh yeah, I guess it's finished.
Oh yeah, I heard no delay, right?
Yeah.
But what is no delay? Was that the end of this year?
It
Yeah.
was just that. Yeah. That's going to come out at its regular schedule, which I don't even know what
I think
day.
November. I'll
Okay.
check it.
The one final thing I will say for everybody, really, if you're going to watch these things, the emanating feeling that I'm having that hasn't gone away is that I really do feel good about Star Wars and The Mandalorian as far as it being in good hands. Like after listening to all these people talk about Star Wars and just seeing the passion in their eyes, like Rod had mentioned before, like I really do, it really does comfort me knowing that something that I love so much as Star Wars is in the right hands, I think.
Well, that's why I had talked about so many times before. Obviously, I'm sure you're going to be bored with it by now, but like having Dave and even Jon Favreau, who obviously still has a love for the lore or whatnot, but having Dave in charge of it, who seems to have a deeper knowledge and understanding, and always like the last thing he said is like George said this, and I believe it too, is to remember to make these things hopeful. It's like that really hit strong with me. It's like this guy should be the Feige for Star Wars.
So that message, though, really, to me, and I know this might be fighting words to some people, really justified the end of Last Jedi. Mm-hmm. Because it was like, it opened it up to, like, this is what I always says, like, my niece, she could be a Jedi, even if she wasn't born into it or something. So now that makes sense, to me, of like, if that was kind of like the guiding light, between all these different branches of Star Wars.
Hope has always been it.
Yeah, like put like a new perspective of hope on that,
Yeah.
on whenever you button it up somehow.
It's
and
cool.
stuff.
Evolving hope.
Yeah. So I hope that I really hope that they choose him to go forward to do more for the Star Wars universe.
I guess I could see that.
I know
I just-
Taika's going to do some stuff. I mean, he's
next
okay.
week.
Well, it's cool that you said that because all of them had their certain things that they were great at, and I think what was it, Dallas? She had what they describe as one of the harder episodes because of the water and the vastness of the episode, how big it was, and then Taika had like a comedy kind of vibed one. I forget what they showed clips of the one that he did.
Well, I think he did one of the later ones, one of the last ones, I think, which is the whole thing with the
Because he was
hand.
acting in the previous ones.
That's right. So this is another thing. Definitely Dave and definitely John, but also those two picking these other directors because of what they do. And then hearing John and Dave talk about how like, this one was like the heist one, and then this one was like a western,
The
and
little
then this
mini movies.
this one's like and that they're grabbing these talented directors to do the best of what they can do and the best of what they know they can do.
Yeah.
So it was really comforting.
Something else that like really surprised me in neither a good or a bad way, it was just like, I didn't think about that, was that this was shot in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I know that sounds weird to people outside of here, but like there's a lot of stuff that just shoots in like Canada or Atlanta or something like that, you know?
Because
And I
it's
guess-
generally cheaper. You get some tax
Yeah.
write-offs.
And this, this space, like LA, you can't really find like a big open field a lot of places, unless you're a lot that has that or something.
Yeah.
If you go to Georgia, you could have Wakanda,
Yeah.
So like, I just kind of expected like, oh yeah, they're probably just shooting somewhere, one of those places, Vancouver or Atlanta stuff. And they were talking about being on a soundstage in LA, and I was like, oh, that makes sense because like half of Los Angeles actors are in Mandalorian at some point.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that they're just here, and it's just a soundstage with that big LED thing. So I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm just kind of surprised, like, okay, so this is actually a little local thing.
Yeah. It's really cool.
Good deal.
They do show a little bit of like behind the scenes stuff. It's not as much as we all would have wanted, but for those of you who are going to take the time to watch these 2 episodes,
Yeah, if you
it's pretty
love
fun.
Star
There's some
Wars,
good stuff.
You like it.
It was interesting perspectives that you would never get otherwise.
I think if you go into it thinking of it as like an elevated podcast, I think you're golden.
Yeah.
It's kind of like someone prepped me for Venom. They're like, you're going to go see a really good buddy cop film.
Right.
I was like, okay, because I would have just assumed it was an action film. Man, I would have been way more disappointed and stuff. But like having like the the right context. So in this, it's great. It's a discussion more than like a behind the scenes thing.
Right.
Yep. So, what should we do next week?
Anybody
I was-
have
I was
final
gonna-
thoughts?
I was going to ask, have you been keeping up with Rick and Morty?
I have
Vince
not.
and I just started it back up again in this season. I'll say, what was it called? It was episode 6. Rick and Morty. What episode was it? Rick and Morty season 4. But wow, everything is so hard to find. Never Rick and Morty. It's about a train.
Mm-hmm.
I think might be one of my new favorite episodes ever now. Because
it's pretty damn good.
I don't want to like spoil it for you if you're gonna watch it. But like they find new ways of like making me laugh. So like like how instead of just doing like Family Guy, Simpsons, they all have like their formula, like they set up in a random way, this happens. Like Rick and Morty, like I'm not going to be one of those people who says you have to be an intellectual person to appreciate this. I just appreciate that they don't assume the audience is dumb when they're writing it.
Yeah.
And so the thing that makes me laugh is, like in this case, was the fact of how difficult it was for me to keep up with the story. And that really surprised me because because I'm going in and like, oh, they're going to, because the first 4 or 5 episodes of season 4, it was kind of like the Simpsons kind of thing. There's clever things in the episodes, but they were all kind of just sitcom-y things.
They
and it
weren't
was really
super
funny.
deep. Yeah.
And it was funny. But then they dropped in with this one, episode 6, and it
got
was
way meta.
well. It was just I was like, I'm laughing at like how like convoluted this story is,
It was
and
great.
they purposely made it that like you could. It was purposeful. Like 5 minutes in,
It was really hard to follow.
super offensive if you're religious, though.
Yeah,
just
I
gonna
heard
put that
that.
out there. But I mean, I feel like I'm a spiritual person. My brother's a pastor. I grew up in the church. I think in the context of entertainment is really funny. I mean, I wouldn't bring it up at mass or anything, but like, the way I saw it, it was like it wasn't disrespecting like the religious figures. It was serving a point in the plot line, and that's hard to describe. If you've seen it, you know what I mean. And I feel like in a way, it doesn't really like support or detract from like the Christian faith. But I feel like is in a way it actually kind of like strengthens kind of like the brand, if that makes sense. Because the reason they brought that aspect in was because it was the most extreme of this thing that they had to bring up in the story, and I was like, wow, this is really good. And then we watched the one after that, and about like these face hugger things, and again, I mean, I like the other one more, but this face hugger thing was really funny because it's imagine. The one thing we haven't seen in alien and sci-fi movies is like, what does the society of facehuggers look like?
Gosh.
And we got a whole episode of it, and it's non-linear. They pull like a memento on us. It's so funny. But the thing is, they followed a formula and then just kept poking fun at the formula.
Yeah.
You know, that whole like 90s indie movie where you start at the middle or something. And I don't know. I'm looking forward to the rest of the season. And they included like a bonus 5-minute anime.
Yeah, that was cool and weird. Really weird, actually.
It was like,
and it was like, what was it? It was like, it was like a 3D thing. Sorry.
well, it was, you know how some like 2D animation could have like that 3D component where it looks like a piece of paper, but it rotates like in a weird CG way and stuff.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that. But it was beautiful, and it was totally played straight.
Yeah.
But again, the thing that was hilarious about it was how straight it played it. I don't know. It's a good.
And what
Good
was
season.
it called? Shogun Samurai, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
Samurai and Shogun, I think it was called.
But I don't know. We were like you have to have cable to like watch it on streaming and stuff.
Yeah, that's what
And
sucks is I haven't watched any of it because like you have to have a certain channel or you have to have
Yeah.
cable or something weird.
And
like,
for
all
a
right,
while,
well, I'm
we
not
found
watching.
some like more thrifty corners of the internet to watch the first half of the season. And then the internet got sloppy or something because they started putting the episodes out of order. So I looked on iTunes. I was like, oh, $20, Vince. I'm just going to buy the season because now we'll know we have it the day it comes out, you know? But I don't know. That was just an idea. I don't know if you want to watch Rick and Morty, but I'm certainly up for talking about it next week.
Pickle Rick.
Well, I was gonna say, the Justice League Dark Apocalypse War apparently is insane.
Oh, okay.
Is that something new that came out, or is that?
Well, it's one of the
something
movies that just came out.
existing. Okay.
So it's like one of the cartoon movies. So
Huh. I'll have to see. I think I mean, I've seen the like dark stuff before, so yeah, I'll have
Yeah.
to check that out.
apparently
is it on?
it's just nuts.
Which app is it on?
I don't think it's on an app.
Oh,
I'm
no.
not I'm not sure. I'll have to take a look here.
It's
We
one of those
obviously
purchase
have-
things.
Yeah.
Probably. Let me take a look. Other than that, I'm not sure if I'd want to do the Rick and Morty thing. Because if I have to pay for like a full season of it, I don't know.
Well, that's the thing is the episodes after they air, like the first half of the 4th season is all free on Adult Swim.
Yeah, that's weird.
It's the latest 2 episodes that are. It's a whole interesting
weird.
thing.
Yeah.
I'm super interested in seeing how they're going to tie the season up, because at first I thought it was pointless, and now I'm starting to see how it's coming together, and I know that it's not going to, because I think their whole thing is they're going to rip the rug on it from underneath us,
Yeah.
or just not address it.
So out of 1,483 ratings, it has a 4.8. And it's got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes for Justice
Oh,
League
wow.
Dark.
Okay.
So I don't
Nice.
know. It just came
Yeah,
out. 100% tomato meter, 92% audience meter.
Nice.
So like,
oh,
I've just been hearing tons of insane stuff about this, and
is it TVMA or is it?
oh
TV?
yeah, it's R.
Sweet.
So
Because I don't watch unless it's like gory.
Rebecca Romaine's in it, Rosario Dawson's in it, Rainn Wilson's in it. It's
DC's done some like really violent, mature Superman stuff. So
and this is supposed to be like the end of the end of the arc of everything, because there's actually an arc to kind of like their they call it like the Murderverse or something.
yeah,
That's-
I've seen some like crazy. I mean, I'm sure you've seen some stuff too, man. It gets dark.
Well, this one gets dark. And it's apparently cool. So I don't know.
So all this new stuff for you guys to watch: Mandalorian episodes, Rick and Morty.
Oh, sorry, real quick. I remember why I brought up Rick and Morty was for Josh. I don't know what their production schedule is like, but they addressed the coronavirus
Oh, weird.
this episode.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
Rick
that's
straight
right.
up says, like, we should just stay home and order stuff online. That's what everybody's doing during a global pandemic.
Right.
Like, either they're
just-
becoming the new Simpsons predicted it, or they worked it in.
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah.
Well, I imagine we've been doing what we're doing for 2 months now. So I mean,
Yeah.
Random, yeah, I don't know. I thought it was just wild. I was like, oh, whoa, like,
Well, like I said, guys, you got a bunch of new stuff to watch, and we always appreciate you stopping in, especially all you new peeps. Thanks for coming in and hanging out with us at Yellow Spandex, and we will see you next week.
Quibi, if you want us to come on your platform, give us a holler.
That's right.
We're not short enough content.
Peace out, you nerds.